Hello, my friends. Want to speak about a few different things today. Um, Firstly, all of these things that we're seeing happening right now with the airlines, and I've spoken about this now for a couple of months, and I've really been following these things for the last 3 years of my walk. One way or another, I've been led to commercial aviation, whether it be plane crashes, the reasons behind these kinds of things, different incidents altogether, all kind of things about airplanes and airplane crashes, something I was never led to at all throughout the course of my lifetime other than these last couple of years. And whenever I saw, whenever the Green Comet was approaching, remember the day that we saw all of the air traffic control systems go down. That only time that ever happened, any other time, was during 9/11 that everything was shut off, and then it happened again then. And then I've had a reoccurring dream, as I've mentioned several times, about smaller airplanes crashing, like Cessna airplanes, series of them, and then began a series of large airplane crashes or incidents. I've had reoccurring dreams of these things over the last, again, several years. And it was always the small airplanes crashing before you started to see things with the bigger airplanes. And then it hit a point at the end of all of these dreams and everything else that I've seen, where literally every single airplane in the sky, commercial airplane, will come crashing down at the same time. Some kind of incident happens. And I don't know whether that's what we call the rapture or not. I really don't know whether it's the exact same thing, the exact same time, or whether it's separate. I don't know that answer. But what I'm seeing is the uptake now. It's gone from all of these small airplanes that we've seen crash, including that one that killed those 5 people that were on their way to the Ohio train derailment. They were members of the team that was coming in there to examine the soil and everything else. Those 5 people died in that small airplane crash heading to Ohio to the derailment site. We've seen several of those small plane crashes, and now I'm beginning to see the uptick in all of the incidents with the larger airplanes. In the movie that I shared as an Easter egg the other day, The Langoliers, it's of course about an airplane that goes back through time as they went into the Aurora Borealis. And interesting about that flight, it was going from LA to Boston. And you look at the aurora that we were just able to see, I think it was 3 days ago now in the United States. Literally, it began, you could see it in LA and ended up all the way to Boston. You could see that aurora. The path of that aurora, it was visible between that entire chunk of land, just like that airplane in the Langoliers flew from point A to point B. Just amazing kind of things whenever you're looking at it, and you have the eyes to see it, of course. This was the Southwest Airlines that I have on my screen here. Smoke filled the cabins. It forced an emergency landing. There has been 7 runway near misses already in 2023. Things like this never happen in aviation over the last 20 years. Because we hit a point, it's said that anything that happens in the airways, it's been paved by blood, and that's true. After every single crash, every single incident, people work meticulously to come up with solutions so that those problems never happen again. And that is what a country, and that's what a people does who has love in their hearts. Anybody that loses somebody in a plane crash does not want to see somebody else lose somebody else. They know how that feels, so they work meticulously to make these planes safer and safer and safer. Every single possible thing that they could fix from these incidents, they did. Now, the corporations, the companies like Boeing and the airlines like Southwest and all these different airlines, they didn't always do what was necessary. You saw, like with the Max, that was the Boeing Max 737 Max that crashed 2 different times because of the computer system. They didn't always adopt the best practices that come up with, but they at least pushed the bar to a higher standard. And now we've watched all this walk back. And if you look at even the hires for air traffic control, they're hiring people based off of their skin color. not how good they actually are. The same as they're doing with surgeons now, which is why you're having so many more deaths in hospitals. They're hiring off of these principles where they're not getting the best people in the job because they're trying to match their quotas. All of that plays a role in this, but other than that, you think of like Maximum Overdrive, how they were given the signs ahead of time that something crazy was going to happen. And we're seeing these runway incidents happen with these large airplanes, which shows me that we're getting very, very close to seeing a very large passenger airplane crash, or several large passenger airplanes crash. And then after that will come another incident of a large airplane crash before they're all going to fall out of the sky. I've been very much given this. It's going to be like a 9/11 event, except multiplied by 1,000,000. And that's what I've seen in these reoccurring dreams. And I just feel that it's all starting to come to pass, to where I can recognize that the early preliminary signs of this event, they're already playing out. We're having all of these excursions. They're not amounting to disaster. It's the Lord saying, look, look, look. Change, or the next one's going to be worse. Change, or the next one's going to be worse. Till he eventually says, all right, you're not going to listen whether I gave you 7 of them or 1,000,000 of them. So here's the incident that I warned you of. That's how the judgment works when it's on a nation. And we're in the midst of that. Another thing I wanted to get into was preppers, and I've spoke many of different times about them, how they are here to deceive the elect. Because, and I'll explain this through almost like psychology. You know, when you read Proverbs, you're reading the inner workings of human beings. Ecclesiastes, you're reading the inner workings of man's mind. That's what all of those are. That's before psychology was ever called psychology. You had Proverbs, you had Ecclesiastes, you had the different books and testimonies in the Old Testament by what God called things that the human mind does. And that's how I look at it also. There's a lot of places where they overlap with each other. And if somebody understands psychology, they would be very amazed to understand that they've also understood a lot of Proverbs. There's overlapping amongst all of them because God's witness is in the world itself. The world just doesn't give him credit for it. Everything we've learned it from God. So whenever you talk about people who are prepping, and I just use the sign, don't tread on me, because they're always big about filling up their bunkers with ammunition and food and get all the things that they need to survive the apocalypse or survive difficult times. First off, you got to understand how God's judgment works. It's in your generation that you must be prepared for everyday normal life, an event that comes that throws you off of that path. That is what you are to be prepared for. But the events that you are to prepare for are you do it naturally out of love. Like I love my kids. I keep a supply of medicine on hand for them if they're going to get sick. I already have it for when they do get sick. I don't have a ton of it, but I have enough of it that I know if something comes up where they all get sick, I have medicine for all of them. That's done naturally in the world. That's your preparation. That is what you are to do when you are in the world and you are God-centered. Remember the observation effect. When somebody is observing God first, all the things in the world that you need will come from that naturally, because you will do things out of love and understanding and out of empathy. So you will naturally be prepared for any hard time that you will experience in this generation that are hard times of men, natural hard times we call them. You're not going to do anything to prepare for godly hard times. That's the things that preppers don't understand. People with that thought process, they're not God-centered, they're world-centered. They don't understand that they can survive things that are man brought about, natural brought about. Can't do nothing whenever it's God brought about. That's why being God-centered leaves the world in the background, even though it's still there. But being world-centered leaves God in the background, and you do a whole bunch of things that are completely and utterly useless. In fact, they're detrimental for your faith. That is the type of people that these are. But why? I always ask the question, why? Because why will get you to understand a lot of things that no other question will. And let me get into this. Let me show you an example of this. Go back to high school and imagine your high school bully. Why did your high school bully go around acting tough, go around yelling at people and cursing at people and hitting people and smacking people and making fun of people? Why did they act like that? They do this, and you can go from a psychological perspective or a Proverbs perspective. They do this because there's some part of themselves that are lacking. They are fearful. So they put up this huge front of being a bully, like, don't attack me. I'm a bully. I'm going to attack you. But then what happens whenever one stands up to the bully? Well, the bully goes and usually runs away cowering in fear, because once you stand up to a bully, that bully lost every bit of his aura, his power. And he's actually not even tough. He's not tough to begin with. That's why he's acting like a bully. If he was truly strong, he would be silent and sit there silent. That's somebody who has strength. But somebody who fronts everything out, like, look at me, I'm huge, I'm powerful, and I'll destroy you. Somebody putting on a front showing their own weakness, their own fear. This is Psychology 101. What is the example of this in the Bible? David versus Goliath. You can look at Goliath like a bully. Big, huge guy, everybody's terrified of him. But what happened when this little scrawny David steps up to him and destroys him? Okay, David was the one who was to be bullied. But as soon as he stood up to the bully fell. This is what preppers do. This is how they put up a front. Now, what is a front? Well, let's look here at the slang definition of this. The character or qualities that a person or organization appears to have in public that are different from their real character or qualities, and whose purpose is often to deceive people or hide an illegal activity. Don't be fooled by the kindness and sensitivities, such as what we see here. These people that are preppers, they're putting up a front of what they're believing in their hearts. They are terrified of losing the possessions in the world, so they hoard them now. They are terrified of the world. They have no fear of God in them. They have fear of the world in them. That's why they try to build up all of the things in the world that they think give them safety and comfort and protection, because they're terrified of losing it, because they love it. They love the things of the world, and they're terrified of losing it. So the whole front is, I'm going to prep, and I'm going to say it's something holy and righteous, and that God agrees with this. I'm going to say you should do it too, because we always should be prepared. That's the same way as saying I fear men. I don't care about God. I'm not centered of them at all, but I fear men and the things that men can do. So let me prepare by using the things of the world. And then let me tell others to prepare too. So I can spread my front, show my holiness and righteousness by getting you then prepared. And then in the sight of the world, we're both going to be good. So I'm clearly doing a good works. And look at me, I'm going to show everybody how good my works is. They're a bully, they're putting up a front, and people are believing it because they themselves are not yet God-centered. There's a lot of my brethren right now that are looking into these prepper channels and all of these different things, and aside from using them for factual information like news, which a lot of times they do have, worldly news on there that is insightful in some way or another, but if you're prepping like they are, you're showing that same fear of the world that they do. So they're buying and selling fear, and people are buying it right up, and then they too become buyers and sellers, and then they put down everybody who is God-centered and call us crazy. Well, God said to prepare. Yeah, prepare for anything that is within natural man's way to prepare, which we already do when you're God-centered because you have love in your heart. Do you see what I'm saying with all of this? A prepper is like a bully. They are terrified of the world, terrified of losing that comfort. So they hoard that comfort for themselves. But yet when the day comes where that comfort is taken away, which is not man's judgment but God's, they will lose all of that comfort also that they stored up, because it's like me putting on a virtual reality glass. Once I delete my save, once I break the glasses, everything that I did on that game is gone. Once God's judgment comes, everything they've stored up in their bunkers is going to be made completely, utterly useless and worthless. Don't fall for this, my friends. Don't fall for this. This is people that are afraid of the world and the things in the world, so they hoard it, trying to tell you at the same time that they're doing it out of godly love when they're doing it out of worldly fear. This would be like David if he was just afraid of Goliath and went and laid down somewhere and built a fortress around himself so Goliath couldn't come in and take his stuff. No, David went out, confronted Goliath, slayed him, and that's all that it took, because he was God-centered. He wasn't doing it of his own accord, he was doing it of God. That is the generation that we live in. And you can also look at the church who worships the rapture. And I'm not even saying Because the rapture, it exists. It's real. I can show it to you a million times in the scriptures. I can show you why it has to happen. But these people worship the rapture itself instead of God because they also love their comfort and their safety and all of their things in the world. That's what they love. And they're terrified of losing it, so much so that they have to worship the rapture itself rather than the one who brings that rescue. They don't want to lose their things of the world. It means they fear the things in the world. They don't fear God on the same level. God is definitely there. He's in their background. He's not their center focus. I love God first. Whether he takes me out of the world or throws me in the midst of it, I know wherever I go, there he is with me. So I fear nothing of the world. But they fear losing the things of the world, which is why they worship the rapture itself. So just a couple things I wanted to share to kind of show you what this actually is, example of what the world actually does and how it applies to us. Love God first, be God-centered first, and everything else in the world will fall in place. God bless.